Hey everyone, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast in which we dive into the career journeys of some of the amazing humans in tech and geek out on topics like software development, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today, I have the awesome Lisa Marie Namphy. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Super excited to have you on. And where are you calling from today?
California. I am in the Silicon Valley. So our Intuit office is in Mountain View. That's the one that I work out of. But I'm actually one of the rare Bay Area natives. My mom was a professor at Stanford, so I literally grew up here, and I'm still here. So that's where I'm coming to you from today.
Oh, that's so cool. And you, as we record this, we are we in the middle of or finishing up KCD Bay Area?
We just finished. We just
Okay.
I was gonna say we just aired it, but it was actually live at the Computer History Museum last Tuesday. So that would have been September 9th. And the Computer History Museum is a fantastic place. If anyone's visiting the Bay Area, it has incredible history to go through. I think a couple of the speakers that may be on stage with us might end up on the walls of that building someday. It was also where the CNCF started, but there was some weird CNCF history, like they signed the charter. I don't know what they call it.
What?
Something happened in that building. So it was actually kind of really cool because Google, donated Kubernetes, and Google's right there also. That's practically on the Google campus. And so all of that happened there. And so it's a historic building. And it's, right next to our office also. So very convenient. And I love that we're on Geeking Out here because I think, I've probably been a geek since childhood, given where I grew up. We sort of in the water we drink. So I'm your resident community geek from the Bay Area.
Oh my God, that is like the nerdiest location ever, and I love it so much. Oh, that must have been so fun to host the event in that venue.
Yeah, it really was fun, and it was a really fun place to grow up as well because it
Yeah.
was the kind of the origin of open source. Really, I mean, I remember in high school, hacking away with my buddies, just building whatever software application we thought was cool and that we thought we needed because a lot of stuff didn't exist back then. And then it's like, oh, this is cool. So maybe other people would want it too. And you just give it out there and for free. This was like before the greed came in.
Yeah.
But that's kind of in our DNA. And so I've been, really kind of had that open source and community mindset my whole career, even
Yeah.
though, I didn't come at it. We can talk later maybe about
Yeah.
career journeys and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back to KCD. Yeah, it was amazing. Solomon Hikes keynoted for us, which was awesome. Jonathan Bryce kicked it off. He's the new executive director of the CNCF, but Jonathan and I go way back to his OpenStack days. He was the kind of the founder of the OpenStack Foundation with Mark Collier, and I ran the first ever like the OpenStack user group. We started it here and built it out, and that was kind of the user group that has now become the sort of Kubernetes and cloud native user group that I run out here. So for 10 of those 15 years, it was the OpenStack user group. So it's a nice. There's a lot of synergy between the two communities, and it's amazing that Jonathan is now running the CNCF with Chris Anichek. So kind of all my worlds colliding, and it was really fun to have Jonathan come out to the Bay Area and kick off the event as well.
Oh, cool. That's so awesome. And is that the first time that there's been a KCD Bay Area or?
Yeah. There's only 4 in the United States, 5 in North America because there's one in Guadalajara, or maybe it was Mexico City this year. There's one in Mexico, and 4 in the U.S. This week is Washington D.C. I think it's
Ooh.
actually on maybe it's today, actually, possibly today or tomorrow. So 16th or 17th for those watching this later. And there was one in Austin. I had the pleasure of emceeing that one, and one in New York City. So
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
yeah, and hopefully next year one in Toronto, maybe.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
will lobby for you for sure.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah.
We will definitely, by the time this comes out, we will know one way or another, and we can put that in the show notes for anyone who's curious.
Yeah, I mean, you deserve it. Toronto is such a great tech community, great tech center. We ran a couple of meetups in our Toronto office last summer as part of Toronto Tech Week, which was
Mhm.
really, really cool. We did an open source meetup there that you came and spoke
I
at with
did.
some other awesome community members. And I believe in December, I think the first week of December, first or second, we are going to host the CNCF user group again. And I will expect to see you there at our
Yes.
office for the holiday edition of the Kubernetes and Cloud Native. Not just Toronto, I think, Archie, I think folks from all over Canada are going to bring their user groups. And I will fly up and we'll have some fun.
Ooh, exciting. Yeah, it was so great to see you too for that, for Toronto Tech Week, which, I've been living in Toronto since I came here for university. So in 1997 is when I moved here. And I didn't even know that Toronto Tech Week was a thing until I got the invite to do the panel, to be a moderator for this panel at Toronto Tech Week. So it was lots of fun, and I hope to participate in that again next year in some form or another.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a thing either. I think it's a really growing community. Toronto is growing so much, as you
Mhm.
observed since you were there for university.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a wonderful city. It's a fantastic city. Granted, I've never been there in the winter, so
It's hit and miss. It's hit and miss. This winter was cold, but our winters of late, our global warming winters have been kind of oscillating between below freezing one day and above freezing the next. And so it's like all the snow will fall and then the next day it'll like all melt. So it's like you never know what you're gonna get.
sounds like slush. But
Yeah,
we'll
sounds like
see.
slush. We're definitely like we're on the because we're on the other side of the lake compared to like Buffalo, right? Buffalo is known for getting all the snow and they get the lake effect. We're like the anti Buffalo. Like lake effect for us means like we don't get that dumping of snow. So the city itself, like surrounding areas will get tons of snow. But the city itself, like it takes a lot for it to like for us to get some good snow in Toronto these days
Interesting.
because of, all the concrete and all that stuff. So yes. So it'll be interesting to see when you're here what version of Toronto you'll get.
Yeah. Well, I love Toronto really because of the people. It's a beautiful city,
Mhm.
but the people are great. They're really great. There was so much enthusiasm at that meetup. We had
Oh yeah.
all week. We had activities every single night, and they were very different. We hosted Monday Girl, Monday something. It was a women's group that came
Mhm.
of the first night, and it was fantastic. Just really amazing energy, and people were like, oh, I didn't know Intuit was super into open source. And I'm like, well, yeah, we are. We can talk about that later too. But
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
these guys, they
That's
exist.
right. That's right. I got mine.
Yes, so cool. Yeah. So, yeah, Intuit's been consuming open source, of course, but also producing incredible open source projects and donating them, including the Argo project, to the CNCF. And we still, maintain it, and we need these things. Like people don't really realize. So Intuit, for those of you that are American on the call, you probably already know Intuit, and maybe you use it to do your taxes or to balance your books if you're in a small business. But for the global folks, Intuit has over 100 million customers, and the brands are TurboTax, QuickBooks, Credit Karma, and MailChimp. And most of the customers have been, small and medium businesses. So we close the books for and do the balance sheets for really a large majority of the small businesses in the United States, and now more medium-sized businesses. So it's really important technology, and it runs on Kubernetes. This is
Oh,
what,
there you go.
this is what maybe a lot of people don't realize. Kubernetes, and then we created Argo because we needed, sort of a GitOps for Kubernetes. We needed things to be a little bit easier. We've also created a lot of cool things for our platform. Kubernetes, as you know, is hard.
Yeah.
Kubernetes out of the box is not easy. So every company probably does something, with their platform to make things a little bit easier. And actually, we just spoke at KCD last Tuesday about some of the things that we built for the platform just around Kubernetes that, we thought, well, maybe could be useful for other people. But Argo was one of the main things that was developed by Pratik and Ed Lee and Sardi, who was my original manager at Intuit. And then, they need it. We still run on Argo. Argo is still extremely important. And things like Argo promotions, the number one asked
Mhm.
for feature, is something that we built for the last cycle because we needed it, and so does everybody else.
Yeah.
So we do, and like this guy was when Argo graduated. This was Detroit
And
KubeCon.
for reference for our listeners only, you're holding up the Argo, what are
Oh,
they?
I didn't realize we weren't
Positives,
all
right? Yeah, we
on
have video and audio, so
Yeah, I am holding up the Argo mascot. We can argue it might be the cutest, most lovable mascot in Cloud
I
Native.
mean, I am still vying for a women's fitted Argo CD t-shirt because the ones that keep getting sent to me are not fitted, and I want a fitted women's
Oh,
Argo t-shirt.
what's your size?
I'm extra small.
Okay. All right. That I will dig through
I
our
I
storage closet.
proudly I would proudly wear because I agree with you. It is the cutest mascot of all of the CNCF. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, for Salt Lake City, we made a really cool snowy version of the shirt. Um, I know we did an extra small. I think I might have given one to my niece because they were really small. Um, so I will look and see what we still
Ooh,
have
yeah.
in our closet, but we will probably be doing more things. We have a super special version of Argo and Numi. We can talk about this later, but from the same people that brought you Argo, this is sort of the next greatest open source project coming out. And so we'll be both of these two. I am now still holding up plushies of an orange octopus and a polar bear. We will have versions of both of them at KubeCon in Atlanta, and Argo is going to be dressed in quite the outfit.
Oh my
I'm not
god.
sure if I can give the big reveal, but let's just say since KubeCon is a week after Halloween or 2 weeks after Halloween,
Yeah.
and a week before a really big movie is about to come out, we may just have something really special. This one might be wearing a black hat, might be riding a broom, might be. We'll see.
Oh my god, I'm
Um,
so excited. I
so
can't
yeah,
wait.
it'll
That's
be
so great.
it'll be a fun thing this year. But anyway, yeah, we create this technology because we need to use it. We
Yeah.
need our we need our products to run on it. And because of that, we got End User of the Year award twice from the CNCF
Ooh.
at KubeCon in 2019 and 2022. So we take our end userness very seriously at Intuit, and we do contribute back a lot. Also to GraphQL, part of that foundation, big Istio users. So lots of stuff that I know you're very familiar with that
Mhm.
powers our tech platform and our product line. And then we run a lot of meetups, and those are all open source meetups. We like to feature end users, but we also like to feature community members from Cloud Native community. So we do them quarterly in Mountain View for any of those are around, and we're going to try to start doing them quarterly in the Toronto and San Diego offices as well. So our next one will have just happened before this airs, October 20th, but
Mm.
in Toronto, it's the first week of December. So I will expect to
Amazing. Yeah, I
see
can't wait. And I should mention also, for Canadian folks, like, we use TurboTax as well. I use the online version. I can't use the desktop version because I'm on a Mac, so I only use the online version. Um, which honestly I love because I hate installing extra crap on my machine anyway. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think we have a desktop version for the Mac, but the online version's better. That's where you're going to get a lot of the AI stuff,
yeah,
a lot of those done for you experiences, and they're getting better every version. So I think I would say stick with
yeah.
your cloud native original here.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it's I think when we met up at Toronto Tech Week, I think one of the comments that you made when you opened up the event that I was at was the fact that not a lot of people realize that Intuit is the creator of ArgoCD, which is wild. Like that's such a little known fact. I guess in some circles for me, I'm like, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and Argo workflows and rollouts and
Mhm.
events. But yeah, Argo CD. It was so the company was called Athletics that Intuit acquired, and that's where Pratik, Ed Sardi, and Mukalika came from. And that was in the early days. I believe it was just workflows at the time, and then once they came into Intuit and they built Argo CD, at that point, then they realized needed to, get more community help and more community adoption, and not just from users and contributors, but also from vendors that were going to build companies around this. And
Yeah.
that's really what it takes to make an open source project succeed. You can do it other ways, but for those of you out there who have your open source projects and you're thinking about how to keep them sustainable and viable for many, many years, and go from, an idea in someone's head to now the third most popular, third largest project in the CNCF. You really need a community to do that, and not just a community of developers and maintainers, because those folks can change companies, leave jobs. You can't guarantee that. You can't always count on it. So once you bring in the vendors, and in our case, it was Red Hat, Acuity, and CodeFresh at the time, now Octopus Deploy. And if it wasn't for them, they probably, we wouldn't have been ready to donate Argo to the CNCF, because we wouldn't have known for sure that it would be sustainable, and because we needed it to be, it's, mission critical for us. So that was kind of the thinking, and I thought Pratik's timing was really good. They had over 500 customers using it. They had the three vendors and us, really making obviously Red Hat could have succeeded, but really with CodeFresh and Acuity, they were building their companies around it. So it doesn't always bother me that people think that maybe one of those brands started it, because they have to market it. They've spent a lot of time and investment in getting that word out there, and that's great. I mean, it's great for us, it's great for Argo, and it's great to keep the project going. So it's something that we're super proud of, and we do take a lot of pride in it. And sometimes our folks internally are like, how come nobody knows that we did it? And we want to be known as a cool tech brand, and as a very a cool open source player and contributor. So we would love people to know that. And obviously Argo is an amazing project, and a super special project that we're going to keep contributing to. So we have a lot of pride, and we'd love people to know it. But it's fine. We had Dan Garfield from Octopus Deploy on stage talking about Argo promotions at KCD, and I probably he didn't mention Intuit, so I did when I introduced him. By the way, this is a feature that that came out of our team, but it's all community. And I wouldn't be a good CNCF ambassador, Kubernetes ambassador, if I was, it's a friendly competition, but we are really all in this together with community, and we don't sell anything. So, we're truly end users. We sell TurboTax and QuickBooks, but we don't sell anything having to do with Argo or Kubernetes. So, we don't have to do that the way other companies do. So it's one big happy family, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I think you touched on something really important, which I think is part of the recipe for a successful open source project, which is it's not just supported by one company, right? The success of Kubernetes, the success of OpenTelemetry, it's not just it's because there are so many companies that are officially backing and dedicating people to participating, developing, working on these products in various aspects, right? It's not just the code, it's the release notes, it's the blog posts. There's so much going on. I think that's part of the one of the reasons why OpenTelemetry is so successful. I always tell people, on a day-to-day basis, I'm working with a bunch of competitors, but I don't see them as competitors. They're all friends, right? And I think I think it's so great that you guys did that as well, with Argo, making sure that it's you're not the only ones propping it. There's other backing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so, and you named I keep saying Argo is the third most popular project. You named the first two, Kubernetes and OpenTelemetry. But there's a lot of smaller projects. And as you said, there's lots of ways to contribute. And people think, oh, well, I need to write code, or I need to, be a maintainer. Docs. I'm always lobbying for, if you have a passion for writing, especially writing English language and not just code, people seem to have this notion that AI is going to be able to write all the docs. And Yeah, it's just not the reality at the moment. We will get there, but it's not there right now.
Not right
A
now,
lot of
no.
projects need help, and your open source project is really only as good as the docs are. I mean, those of us
So
in
true.
DevRel, I always say your docs team, that's your original DevRel. That was our case at Cockroach. We had phenomenal docs. And I encourage all open source projects to really think that through from the beginning. And that's going to help a lot. But people, when they look at adopting open source technology, especially something that hasn't been given to a foundation yet, that you're not really sure, is that going to be updated? Is it going to be around, is it going to outlive what you need it to? If you need it for 4 years, are those maintainers going to keep maintaining it for 4 years? Is there going to be, new releases of it? Is it going to stay cutting edge? So it's really hard for companies like us. Like, we evaluate a lot of open source technology, and that's a question we ask. How viable is this community? How sustainable is this product going to be? And because the last thing you want is, you're making all your own updates and you're basically just doing everything for the product, and you're hoping it gets out there into, so you don't have to like fork the whole thing. And but it's a problem. So for those of
Yeah.
you out there also, trying to figure out how you're going to play in this open source community or develop your own technology, just know, that's what companies are really thinking about before they adopt. So the more community you have, the more diverse your user group is, the more companies you get involved. And if you get lucky and you get a vendor in who's going to, really bet their business on your project, then that's a good recipe for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on a really important point too. Like when I think a lot of startups heavily rely on open source because it's like, hey, it's free, available, yay! I don't have to pay for this. But then you get to large enterprises where even those startups start to scale, and you need something a little bit more, little bit more beefy, or you need a guarantee. It's not so much a beefiness, but you need a guarantee of reliability, right? And I remember in my banking days, it kind of broke my brain initially when the bank I was working at was like, well, we're a little bit hesitant about working with open source because we want to pay somebody for support. So unless there's like some support contract wrapped around that open source offering, then it's too much of a risk, right? Especially when you have critical applications, critical services running that rely on these tools. How do you ensure that when shit hits the fan, there is going to be, a timely resolution, right? Because like your Oracle database, I'm dating myself, spent many years of my career doing Oracle stuff. When your Oracle database starts crapping out, you can call, the Oracle support team, and they'll get on the phone with you in the middle of the night to try to resolve your issue. So do you have that guarantee when you're working with open source software, right?
Yeah, it's really true. And, if it's a really small project, I always try to encourage people, give them some love, give them some money. If you're using this project, there's ways to donate to the maintainers and the team developing, because if they can't pay the bills, they're going to have to get a full-time job that they're working around the clock at, and they're not going to be able to maintain that technology. So we always try to give a little love back if we are using a project and it's like, a guy and his dog in his garage, or a woman and her dog. I wasn't going to say cat, but I'm a dog person, so it would be me in my garage with a dog. Yeah, and then you have to support that if you can, and so it's like, consider it like a GoFundMe, something like
Mhm.
that to really help. And your Oracle days also brought up. I started my tech career, one of my early jobs out of college. I actually spent over 5 years at Oracle way back in the 90s.
Ooh.
So yes, that was early stages in my career. I had actually worked for a Posix certification company before that. So
Oh,
I
really?
did geek out. I mean, if you want to talk about geekiness, Posix, Posix certifications are super.
Damn.
And I was like trying to teach myself Linux at the time. And, but it was really cool technology. And we had, back in the day, if you wanted to sell to the government, you had to have Posix certifications. Like, it
Mhm.
was a really important thing. And so we would have technology in there, not just software, but hardware that we were certifying. Like we had the original Sun pizza boxes in there. We had IBM mainframes. We had all this technology, and they would like bolt it to the floor of our office so somebody couldn't walk out with it because it hadn't even been released yet. And we would
Damn.
test it, and we did a couple hundred Posix certifications a year. And then, you'd get your certification, and, Microsoft would run off with their technology, and they'd be able to sell it. So that was kind of how I, right out of college, got into tech, because I was an English major, which probably came out of the fact that my mom was an English professor here at Stanford, and it was a little bit of a default. And I went to college back in the dark ages when, my Jesuit advisors were not encouraging women to go into the math and sciences field, even though my math SAT scores were twice what my English scores were. But, they were like, do you want to go into the school of nursing, school of education? What do you want to do? I was just like,
Oh, how?
yeah,
Oh, wow,
it was,
wow.
it was
Oh,
like that. So,
geez.
and I didn't have enough like role models or
Yeah,
examples at the time, even though I grew up here and we were just like such geeks. But, I was like, yeah, you just get influenced by your advisors, and
yeah, yeah,
that was what they knew, I guess. And it wasn't until my senior year that one of my roommates was a math major. And I was like,
yeah,
wait, we get to do that? What are you talking about? And I was taking electives. I was like tutoring the hockey team in calculus, even though I wasn't
yeah.
taking calculus, but I was taking astronomy and all kinds of
What?
things. Love it. I still love that stuff.
Oh my god, I love astronomy. I will nerd out with you on that
Oh,
anytime.
heck yes, 100%. Oh my gosh, when we get to Toronto, assuming this
Okay,
person is,
okay, yes,
we're
it's a
looking over
deal.
this. It's the first thing I do when I get somewhere. I orient myself like, okay, where are all my friends?
Oh
Um,
my god.
because you can
Okay.
rely on that. The planets
Yeah,
move, the stars kind of, where they are, and they're there for you. And
so great.
yeah, love it, love it, love it. Scorpio is one of my favorite constellations, and so this is his time of year, and he's looking great up there in the sky from where I live. So every day I just ground myself. I'm like, hey, Scorp, what's going on?
For me, it's always like in the winter looking up at Orion. It's like that sense of comfort.
Yeah, I'm a Libra, but that's not an interesting constellation. Just the stars are kind of boring the way they are. I just love Scorpio and that fantastic tail. Orion is an awesome one too, and Cassiopeia is probably another one of
Oh,
my
yeah. Yeah,
favorites. It's
totally,
just so
totally.
beautiful, that W, and it's just
I
right
know,
there in the
right?
sky. Totally love it.
Totally. I love finding a fellow astronomy nerd. That's great.
Totally, totally. So I
So
wish I had gone into that field. I should have been a rocket scientist at NASA. NASA's like literally right there. We started OpenStack at NASA, and
oh
I would
my
run
god.
meetups right there. And but and I would go and geek out with the space portal guys on Friday
What?
afternoon. We would bring a bottle of wine and go up there on the base, and I'd find out all the things going on. So I absolutely love that. I should have done it. So if you're listening to this and you're a young woman and you're choosing your career, go for what you love. Go for your
Yeah.
passion. I came back into tech through this roundabout way, and it's nothing like taking Pascal courses at a community college and night school to try to like figure out to learn PL SQL to understand the Oracle
Oh my
database.
god. PL
Yeah,
sequel was my buddy for years. It was like a love-hate relationship with it.
yes, yes. Well, SQL has come a long way. My last role before Intuit, I was at Cockroach
Mhm.
DB. So learned all about distributed SQL, and
Oh,
that is
yeah,
some
yeah.
really cool stuff. It's an amazing architecture, and once you kind of get into it, especially if you're a SQL and a relational database person, and then you look at distributed SQL, and it's like, as my friend Jim Walker used to say, you can't unsee it. Once you see
Yeah,
it, you can't unsee it. It's just a really special thing that makes you be able to do incredible use cases,
yeah.
multi-region stuff, and just the scalability and reliability is just it's unmatched. So I really had a lot of fun there at that company for 3 years, getting to try to they have an open source version as well, and
Yeah.
so building community there. They had fantastic docs. I'm sure they still do. um, just one of the best examples I've seen of a really amazing docs and education team. But yeah, that's really 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 fun technology. And but then to get the opportunity to actually work for an end user. My whole community career has been
Yeah.
pushing end user stories out there and telling the stories that people come from the technology side, like, oh, I'm a Kubernetes maintainer, I'm geeking out at the new feature in Argo, And it's like, well, why don't we talk to the people that are actually using this? Why don't we
Yeah.
let like people tell their story? Let's talk to even the architects and who is actually the operators, right? Let's not forget about them. And when we start in these huge technology, OpenStack did the same thing, and Kubernetes, we tend to start from the inside out. And when I was running the OpenStack meetup, we'd always have the project maintainers come and talk about, whether it was Project Ironic or Nova or Neutron or whatever the projects were. And after a while, I'm like, I don't think the people who are building and using this stuff really need to know what the next feature in Neutron is.
Yeah.
Sometimes because people in the Bay Area tend to roll our own, vanilla Kubernetes, they call it now, because
Yep. Yep.
that just sounds so delicious to me. Every time someone says that, I'm
I
like,
know, right? Not
yum.
as tasty as it sounds.
I know, right? It's
Or at least
horrible.
it's a lot of work to get that tasty Kubernetes instance running.
Exactly, exactly. But it's better than rolling your own, because in California that also has its own connotation. But yeah, but the rest of the world, they're happy with distros, OpenShift and whatever Rancher, other distros that are out there,
Yeah.
and that's fine. You have a throat to choke, right? It's not as hard, but those tend to be behind the behind trunk, right, behind the
Yeah.
latest release.
That's right.
So what are we doing at these conferences and at these meetups talking about like the latest feature, when it's like people aren't even gonna be able to use that for 3 years, and people get upset. So I like to tell end user stories and have people share, what they're building, how they're doing it, how you're customizing Kubernetes, because like I said, it's hard. What are you
Yep.
doing? And maybe somebody else can learn from that. So that's the user group that we like to run out here, and that's the talks I like to submit to KubeCon and to other conferences. And turns out they get accepted a lot, because it's a story people want to hear.
Yeah, yeah, people love hearing those stories. And speaking of KubeCon, like what was the first KubeCon you ever attended?
Ooh, Austin, maybe that time it snowed and we all got stuck at the airport, or the people that were at the party at Rainy Street got snowed on. So that was probably 2017, I want to say. And then I've been to, I think, everyone since. I was doing all of the OpenStack summits, and I was one of the first ones to start talking about Kubernetes at the OpenStack summit, and I was
Oh,
getting
cool.
like Linux Foundation, travel assist and support,
Yeah.
because people weren't talking about Kubernetes. I mean, they were talking about Docker a little bit first, but then Kubernetes at an OpenStack. And I was running meetups like, how do you run Kubernetes on OpenStack? How do you run OpenStack on Kubernetes? How do you have an OpenStack sandwich? Kubernetes, OpenStack, Kubernetes. How do you have clouds, spin up clouds? So it was early days that I got involved in the Kubernetes community, but then I didn't actually start going to the KubeCons until I went to the one in Austin, and then when I joined Portworx and we were starting to sponsor them, I started going with the vendors, and then just started submitting talks. And I think I've spoke at, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 KubeCons, 8 maybe.
Wow,
So
that's
I feel like it's been
amazing.
a
That's
lot.
such a huge accomplishment, especially, considering how like it's such a low acceptance rate, considering how many applications they get.
Yeah, it used to be like 12 to 13%, maybe higher if you're with an end user.
Yeah.
I think it's probably even lower than that now. But I'm a CNCF ambassador, as are you, and so we also get involved in talks, or get asked to be part of them. So there's been a few that way. I think I've seen you speak with Marino, or not. Now they have the colos. I saw your talk. I dove out of ArgoCon, and your talk was in the big room right across the hall. And I jumped
That's
in
cool.
there, took a bunch of photos. They didn't come out as great because I was in the back, so I didn't send them. But I always love your talks. Your slides are fantastic. All
Oh,
of
thank
the
you.
animations and everything you have for the cartoons, I guess I should say.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
always informative and entertaining. So I always like to catch your talks. I caught your talk in Salt Lake City also,
Oh,
that you
thank
did with Marina.
you.
Yes, I'm almost like an Adriana stalker. You couldn't
Oh
see
my
me.
God, I
That's
love
so thank
it.
you. Yeah, so KubeCon is a whole other thing, surviving that show. But there's a lot of really great events. If you didn't get your talk accepted there, or you don't have your company supporting you to go there, that's one of the reasons the KCDs started. There's a lot of other meetups. Whether they're part of the CNCF or not, you can look on Luma and meetup.com and just find all those local meetups. And, not everybody puts their stuff through the CNCF. And then there's also, like, we started this conference that you were part of last time called KubeCrash. By the time this airs, so just for some branding, I got my filter on, so I don't know if this is going to come through, but yes, this is the KubeCrash branding. Okay, that's super
It's a
blurry.
little
Yes,
blurry. You
it
can
was
kind of
like
make it
for
out.
a minute it wasn't blurry, but anyway,
Oh, there it
um,
is. Yeah.
that was so KubeCrash is a conference that uh, four amazing women started. Mostly it was Catherine Paganini's brainchild, and she called up Danielle Cook and me and said, what do you think about this conference? And we were just coming out of COVID, and we thought, like, how can we continue to bring technology to people who can't go to KubeCon? And this was KubeCon Valencia, right before KubeCon
Mhm.
Valencia. So
Mhm.
we started this conference where we asked, it was all virtual, still is. We asked people to come talk about tech, talk about something Kubernetes, and it was like no time zones left behind. So we filmed it, or we streamed it from our hotel room in Valencia on a US time zone. And then we thought, well, we'll just keep doing that at KubeCon. But it got to be too much to do it at KubeCon. So now we do
Wow.
it
Yeah.
2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. So this time we will have done it. It's next week for me, but we'll have done it on September 23rd. And then I think we're going to do the next one in January.
Oh,
So
nice.
stay tuned for that date, probably the end of January. So it's a really great conference. We've had amazing speakers. We've had Solomon Hike's keynote. We've had, I love to feature end users. We've had Alex Crane from Chick-fil-A. We've had Boeing. We've had a lot of banks, Capital One. We've had, AI panels. We did a whole zero trust themed one, and then we started crowdsourcing our theme. And the last 4 times, platform engineering has unanimously won.
Mm.
So we've had a lot of platform engineering talks.
Yep.
We had an amazing observability panel. And I think that was the panel you were on last time, right? Or were you on
I
the
did. No, I did a talk with Reese on troubleshooting the OTel operator.
Oh, that's right. We were going to originally ask you to be on the panel, and then we were like, no, 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 no. You need your own. You need your own talk.
Oh my God, I
Which
feel
is
so
good.
honored.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Catherine and Danielle, we're all big fans of yours. So,
Aw.
yeah, that was a good talk. And all of the recordings are there. So if you go to
Yeah.
kubecrash.io and you click on past events, you can look at the one from the spring and you can see Adriana's talk. It's very good. And then we had this panel that was outstanding. I just think of you as the open telemetry expert, so I assumed you were also on that. But this panel was like these 5 fantastic women who were just really, really good. And the panel was so good, and I just wanted to give them more and more time. So we ended up submitting it for KubeCon, and it got accepted. So we couldn't get all the same women, but Danielle is going to moderate it, and we have. So by the time this airs, that won't have happened yet. So come check out this incredible panel. Just look for Danielle Cook's talk, and 4 incredible experts in open telemetry are going to be on that panel. So that was a
Oh,
fun
that's
talk
amazing.
to push from KubeCrash out to KubeCon, because usually we go the other direction. But KubeCrash is great, and I hope to see you all at a KubeCrash in the future.
Yeah, and I'll include the link to KubeCrash in the show notes. And as a follow-up question, how does if one's interested in speaking at KubeCrash, what's the process for that?
Yeah, there's an email from the website that you can join or sponsor, but I think it's probably all one email. Click on it, pretty much anything, and you'll get to us. And so, just we did a call for papers once through Sessionize, and we might do it again. But we really like, people come to us with a unique idea, something informative, that if we have a theme like platform engineering, again, that's a very broad theme. I want to feature more AI stuff because that's what everybody wants to talk about, and that's just the big problem everyone's trying to solve, and like in one way or another. So those talks could be interesting. We really love featuring end users, so most of the keynotes, we'll call them, or we always have an end user panel. So if you're a first-time speaker, we also like to feature a lot of people who don't have a footprint out there on the web yet, so that when you apply to a conference, you have something you can point to and say, yes, I did this talk. And if people are shy and they're just starting out and trying to get confidence, panels are amazing things to be on. It's really kind of low. It's not a heavy lift unless you're the moderator, like I often have.
Yeah, sometimes it's more work for the moderator than the panelist.
Yeah, it's a lot of work if you're the moderator, if you do it well. But yeah, for panelists, if you're an expert in a field, let us know what it is. And so we do like to feature. But yeah, kubecrash.io, there's email addresses there, and that gets to all of us. if you just hit up one of us, sometimes people like send me a note on LinkedIn or Catherine a note, and it's better to reach all of us because we're all
Yeah.
busy, but we're busy at different times. And we kind of do, as you do community, it's a labor of love. It tends to be your nights and weekends. So, most of us have really busy jobs during the
So
week
true,
that
so
we have to
true.
focus on. So we like people to go through the channels just so they get the most eyes on things. And we have a Slack channel now for alumni speakers, and we have a diversity Slack channel on the CNCF Slack. So if you're passionate about diverse speakers and more diversity, DE&I representation at conferences, just hit one of us up. I'm probably Lisa on the CNCF Slack, or Lisa Marie maybe. No, I think I'm just Lisa, or El Namphy. I don't know. But you can Slack me and I can add you to our diversity speaker channel. I know you're on it, and thank you very much for being
Yes,
on it.
yes.
Yeah, something we're all really passionate about.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so great. And I mean, especially because you do have like your very busy day job on top of all this. So to be able to run this as well is, I think, a testament to how important this sort of thing is. So thank you for
Yeah.
your work on that.
Yeah, and it's just, if you're a community architect is a title that I use, because it's more than just organizing or managing. It's really thoughtfully thinking through how to build viable communities, diverse communities, inclusive communities, and sustainable communities. And it's a lot that goes into it, but it's kind of, if it's who you are, it's who you are. You can't really not do it. Like, I was doing it way before I was an ambassador, and way before any foundation said, you should run your meetup through us, or anything like that. It's just getting people together to talk about technology. We do it anyway. We geek out here on Friday nights and talk tech, and it's what we're passionate about. And so communities kind of come together around those kind of things. And right now, like if you go to South of Market and South part of San Francisco, every bar, every coffee shop, it's just AI. You just hear all these,
Oh my God.
startups that were started on a napkin, but like you
Yeah.
have all of these like and all of this incredible passion around what's going on in San Francisco with a lot of
Yeah.
the AI stuff. So you can't really get away from it, but it's, luckily I love it and I'm super passionate about it. So I kind of eat, breathe, and sleep it.
It's been, it's been fun dabbling in AI. We were chatting just before the recording started, and I've become very fascinated with MCP servers. So I've been having lots of fun playing around with that. I know there's an ArgoCD MCP server that I think Acuity put out.
They like to hear
And
their name. They like to hear their name.
that's right. That's right. The octopi are dancing around. Yeah. So I'm still wrangling that one wrangling with that one at the time of this recording. I'm hoping I can sort out my my connectivity issues, because I love the idea of like I started vibe coding um, a little bit, and it's been a journey because it's like on the one hand, especially actually for like for SRE type tasks, right? SRE and platform engineering type tasks, especially things like I can never remember the command for like, I want to grab the base64 decoded value of a secret in Kubernetes. I'm like,
You
ugh,
don't have that command
remember
on
this.
the top of
I don't have it memorized. I have it in my private GitHub repo, a list of like Kubernetes commands I always forget. But I'm like, now with chatbots, I can just ask it and it'll tell me. And I'm like, thank you. Or my favorite, like regex. Nope, never. Like I know some, but like, now I can just ask my chatbot, hey, create a regex that does this. I'm like, great. It tells me I don't have to worry about this crap.
That's going to be an awesome talk. When you get that going, you should submit that. If you don't, I mean, ArgoCon is an obvious, but I think that would be an amazing
Oh, I
KubeCon
will.
talk.
I will. What
Yeah.
about for CubeCrash? Dun, dun,
That would, oh,
dun.
heck yes. That would,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. 'Cause I'm giving this talk on September 22nd at the Toronto CNCF meetup for the CNCF 10th anniversary. So yeah.
Very cool. Very
So
cool. Well,
I'm
yes.
happy to demo at KubeCrash, or I
Our
like your idea of submitting to ArgoCon. I think that'd be lots of fun.
Yeah, our January CubeCrash, that would be perfect, and it'll be perfected by then, I am
That's
sure.
right. That's
Or at
right.
the meetup in Toronto. Well, you're already doing Toronto meetups, so you might
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah.
diversify, spread that around. But
That's
yeah,
right.
no, vibe coding is super cool stuff. I was messing around. They encourage all of us, like even, I'm director of developer relations, so I don't really need to write code. But we do a lot of follow me homes and try to have customer empathy and like what are our users going through, and things that like autosave or lack of autosave is something that drives me nuts because I hate losing my work.
Oh
I
yeah.
just can't stand it. I just typed all my goals into the system last week, and one of my team was like, "I don't see your goals. Where are they?" And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh
they're in
no.
there." And like, you don't hit submit, and now I'm just, I'm trying to talk to HR, like, you autosaved them somewhere, right? Like, don't make me go through those hours of my life again. And especially something as painful as like
Yeah.
writing a resume or doing your goals.
Oh my
That's
God. No,
someone
I've
doing
I've
that.
totally had that stuff happen to me, especially around those HR tasks where you're like, it's taken me forever to convince myself to do this. Now that
Yes.
I've done it,
You don't want to
now
lose it.
you've gone and messed with
Yes.
all my work.
Right. So I was messing around just in QuickBooks, and I was like, maybe I can build a little, kind of enhance the autosave stuff so that users don't lose their work. Like, let's have an autosave every 30 seconds. And I'm just using vibe coding because my coding skills are not mad. So I'm like vibe coding, and I'm like, okay, let me try this. And I'm like, oh, that's so annoying. It's like popping up, and now I'm losing
Yeah.
my concentration, not my work. And so I was like, let's make that more subtle. And there's just so many cool things you can do. And I ended up geeking out for like, getting lost in this like
Yeah.
hour of having fun with trying to see if I can get this feature in. Turns out I should have been doing it in my goals application instead. But that'll be the next thing I try to tackle. But yeah, vibe coding is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's weirdly addictive too. Like, I feel like in a way it's like playing slots, right? Because you're refining your prompts and you're like, oh, I'm so close. I am so close to the jackpot. So you keep going and going and going. Next thing you know, you've lost like an hour trying to refine this prompt to get it just the right way.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Playing slots, throwing good money after bad. Yeah, definitely.
There is that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow
Somewhere I can almost reach it.
somewhere.
I can almost get there.
That's
Oh
right.
my gosh. So fun.
Oh, well, we are coming up on time, but before we wrap up, I wanted to ask if you have either any hot takes or words of wisdom that you wanted to share with our audience.
Oh gosh, I have several, but
Ooh.
do we get to talk about superpowers? You always ask your
Oh
guests
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
superpowers.
Oh, we didn't get to the lightning, or sorry, I call them lightning round questions. Sometimes they're not, sometimes they are. But we can do the icebreaker questions really fast, and then transition into the into the words of wisdom. How's that
Yeah,
sound?
sure.
Okay. All right. We will do the lightning round questions as lightning round. Usually sometimes they take like 15 minutes to like most of the show.
Oh, okay, we'll be lightning.
All right, we'll be lightning. Okay, first question. Are you a lefty or a righty?
Righty.
Do you prefer iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Do you prefer Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Mac.
Do you have a favorite programming language?
No, but my favorite text editor was Atom. Do you remember that one?
Oh my God, I do.
The
I never
GitHub.
used it, but I remember it.
Yeah, I had a T-shirt and everything.
Oh,
Programming languages, probably have to go with Python.
I love Python. I agree. Next question. Do you prefer JSON or YAML?
JSON. I mean, everybody loves to hate on YAML, right? I'm not a YAML hater. I just love. I have a lot of team members named Jason, so we have a lot of JSON.
Yeah.
JSON seems to be, and the Argo guy at one point was, it was a Jason and the Argonauts reference until it ended up also there's an octopus in Australia called Argo. So Jason, JSON, gotta go with that one.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. Do you prefer spaces or tabs?
Tabs.
Okay. And two more questions. Do you prefer to consume content through video or text?
Text.
And final question. What is your superpower?
Building bridges and connecting people and technologies.
Awesome. I love it. And I mean, I get that vibe just from like our entire time in this interview. And I think it's wonderful to have like you and others like you in the community doing that and sharing their passion because, and especially as a woman in tech, because we need to inspire others like us, so that they know that yes, you can do tech if you want to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Women of tech, women of color in tech.
That's
A
right.
lot of non-binary or LGBTQ women in tech. I love that you're doing this podcast. I love that you invited me. Thank you so much. I mean, I thank you for all that you do for the community and for women in tech. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate spending time with you. We need to do more of this.
I know, I know. It's always like whenever we see each other at KubeCons, it's always like, "Hi, bye," like, because KubeCon is so, like, busy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it was so nice at the Intuit event in Toronto, this, I guess, early summer, to, like, get some time to chat, and I'm very, very glad that you were able to come on the podcast because for me, it's so important to elevate women in tech and other members of underrepresented groups on this podcast. So I really want to share people's amazing stories and love of technology, geeking out on the things that they love, with this audience. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you for validating all of our inner geeks. It's really fun to geek out with another woman. It's actually super, super fun. Love it.
Awesome. And so now for your parting words of wisdom.
I uh, I would say since we've been talking about KubeCon and conferences, I would say these conferences are great. They're great for meeting people. They're great for networking. They're great for getting together. They're great for learning. If you leave the conference and you leave it all at the conference, it was totally worthless. So what I encourage people to do, and my dear friend John O'Bacon is really big on this. It's probably he's one of my mentors and who taught me to really think very thoughtfully about this. What is the one thing you're going to do when you leave the conference to take with you going forward so that you keep it going, and do it the first day you get home? Like, what is the first day when you're back in the office, the thing you're going to do that you learned at the conference or that you got out of the conference? And if you were only there networking, write to all those folks on LinkedIn, do something and make a connection, invite one of them out to, to lunch, to tea, coffee, whatever it is. But if it was, a community leadership summit or a DE&I day, all of that learning is worthless unless we do something with it. So what are you going to do on day one when you get back from the event or the conference or the meetup that's going to be game changing that you learned at the meetup? And if you approach every conference that way, I think we can all be game changing.
Oh, that is amazing. I love that. That is great advice. I mean, this is the best way to make the most out of your conference experience and keeping that in mind, right, as you're attending the conference, so that you don't, it's at the back of your mind for when you get home. I love it.
Exactly. Don't leave it all at the conference. Otherwise, what was the point?
That's right. Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for geeking out with me today. And y'all don't forget to subscribe and be sure to check the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time.
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Vilela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.